College is a place where one goes to obtain knowledge and truth. In order to obtain truth, one must be able to constantly ask questions and critique any and all arguments in which they see fault. This process is known as free speech. Therefore, college is a place for free speech. However, college is a community with a large and diverse social order which needs to be maintained. In order to maintain this community, a balancing of free speech and respect needs to be preserved. As anyone can see, this leads to a contradiction. It is impossible to have complete freedom of speech while also providing for a completely tranquil community. Like many issues we face as a society today, freedom of security must take a higher precedence. What is more important to those who wish to be educated? Knowledge. Free speech should be held at a higher precedence in this scenario because bad, ill-informed speech can always be challenged with better speech. However, silence cannot. Historically speaking, colleges as well as a variety of other federal institutions across the United States have been a place for segregation, bigotry, and hatred. Few women and even less African Americans could attend university in the early years of America. The reason was clear: racism and sexism. It was not until the early 19th century when women's education was recognized and administered at a state level. Many states viewed women as lesser, thus segregating women into female-only colleges. For some cruel and obvious reasons, African Americans had even less opportunity to attend university. In the late 19th century, a handful of black institutions opened, giving a select few a chance to get a higher education. In the landmark case, Brown versus the Board of Education in the Topeka, Kansas, as well as the civil rights movement as a whole, African Americans were fighting back for better treatment and a chance for education. According to the U.S. Department of Education, Brown sparked a variety of other laws under Title V of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which protected individuals from discrimination based on race, color, or national origin in programs or activities receiving federal financial assistance. Women, on the other hand, had to wait until the enactment of Title IX in 1972 to be guaranteed similar federal protection of discrimination and the right to education. While these may be great strides for equality, they may have left some resentment in our society. Some argue that our country's racist and sexist past has trickled down to the next generations, creating for the continual mistreatment of minorities and women in universities. They argue that the hateful rhetoric, more famously known as hate speech, creates a poor climate for minorities and women. Speakers such as Ben Shapiro and Milo Yiannopoulos state that rape culture does not exist, transgender people are ill, and the Islamic community is cancerous, can and should be seen as radicals who psychologically and emotionally damage students. Therefore, colleges should not have to give a platform for these hateful ideas and should rightfully punish those who attempt to promote hate. Doing so would not only better the lives for many minorities across campuses, but it will also create a good educational policy which shows the college cares. It is an undeniable fact that our country has done many dark deeds throughout its existence. No logical mind would or should have ever attempt to justify our country's mistreatment of minorities and women. However, I argue that the censorship of hate speech would not only crumble the foundations on which our country was built upon, but it would also hurt those the censorship would be attempting to protect. The United States of America was founded upon the idea of individual liberty. This idea is the sole proprietor to the most influential written document the world has ever seen, the Bill of Rights. The first written rule to the land is the First Amendment, which states, "Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or promoting the free exercise thereof or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people peacefully to assemble and to petition the government for redress of grievances." While the First Amendment does protect free speech, our right to it is not absolute. There have been several Supreme Court cases over the past century that ruled speech is not protected when it is. Obscenity, fighting words, defamation, child pornography, perjury, blackmail, incitement to imminent lawless action, true threats, and solicitations to commit crimes. The most simplified and easiest to understand way of knowing the limits is that one may not yell fire in a crowded theater or cause for direct harm to someone. We now know the limits to our free speech, but to what extent has free speech been tested? The case National Socialist Party of America versus Village of Skokie was between a small majority Jewish village versus the American Nazi Party. It is not difficult to see the differences just by looking at the name alone. The NSPA wished to march in full Nazi uniforms through this village, which was taken to the Supreme Court. The court ruled that their march was constitutionally acceptable because it did not cause for direct harm to those in the village, and those in the village who disagreed with their rhetoric were constitutionally permitted to argue their march. This case shows the beauty in our nation's freedom. No matter the speech with few expectations, we can combat bad speech with better speech, thus allowing for the equality of opportunity no matter the view. My final question to those who want to limit are as followed. Who attributes us such a rule for limiting speech? The power to take such a staple out of our culture would have to be decided by a majority, but that would then discriminate on the minority's beliefs. If someone stated God hates homosexuals, would that be prejudice or a misguided belief? If someone says American criminals are disproportionately black, is that hate speech or a hypothesis? How would one decide? I would like to end this essay with a quotation from one of our founding fathers, Benjamin Franklin. If all printers were determined not to print anything till they were sure it would not offend nobody, there would be very little printed.